So let's clear it up once and for all that Nazism and communism, they're not just political ideologies. They're not just religions. They are cults. It's the strongest word that you could really use to describe them. They're satanic cults. So what is a cult? Let's again define the term. A cult is an extremist religious belief system that is violent and dangerous to the lives, rights, and freedom of those who are not its members. This is, and actually to some who are its members. Okay? So this is what defines a cult versus just a normal religion. You can believe in all kinds of nonsense. Call it a religion if you want, right? As long as it's not hurting anybody else, you can believe that pink elephants are floating all throughout this room right now and call that your religion. As long as it's not hurting other people, you can knock yourself out. Be as stupid as you want and believe whatever nonsense you want to believe in, right? Once a religion crosses the line of just saying, we think this, and it says either you must think this way or we're going to kill you, or we're just going to take over society and do what we want. If you stand in our way, we're going to kill you because we have these beliefs and we're going to act on them. That's a cult. It's no longer just a religion. Religion stands in the way of your understanding of truth, but a cult actually violates your rights when you stand in its way in any perceivable way to them. Okay? So cults throughout human history have traditionally used the same basic techniques. I laugh hilariously when people say, I'm trying to form a cult with what on earth is happening. Oh yeah, I'm teaching everybody all the damn techniques that cults have used throughout time. I have a whole section in my podcast where all I do is teach cult techniques that cults have used against people to say, hey, you got to be aware of how this works so you don't fall into a cult like I did when I was young, right? I'm teaching the techniques that cults use to get their membership, to make people do crazy stuff, right? But yeah, I'm trying to start a cult. You know, it's the cult, it's the anti-cult cult, I guess. You know, they've traditionally used the same exact techniques to establish and maintain the loyalty of their fanatic followers. These include, but are not limited to, social isolation, conformity of thought and appearance, censorship of conflicting information, indoctrination via repetition of ideological dogma, and mental and physical trauma against their very adherents. Think about these in relation to Nazism and communism. They're everywhere in their methodologies. The techniques of cults are the exact methodologies that those political regimes, those totalitarian regimes have used. I mean, you look at the religious fervor of cults, political cults today, and these are ultimately religions. You know, they have millions of devoted acolytes. That's what politics has become. It is the new worldwide religion, and the people who follow it are cult members. Let's look at some of the ideologies that underlay both Nazism and communism and really define cult behavior. They define cult ideology and behavior. The first and most widespread and important to understand is collectivism. Collectivism is a social worldview that emphasizes the needs and goals of the group or collective over the rights and freedom of individual human beings. Collectivism exists in diametric opposition to individualism, the social worldview that stresses the paramount importance of individual rights, freedom, and property. Collectivism is the basis of ideologies such as groupthink, social conformity, corporatism, religion, politics, totalitarianism, and of course, religious cults. Collectivism is always the very top ideology that these people are bowing down to. It's always, I'm a member of the group. The group's needs come before the individual's need or rights. Always. They have to get you into groupthink first before they give you the sick ideologies and perverted practices of any cult. The second ideology then it naturally is the belief in authority, authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is a false religious belief system based upon the idea that some human beings have somehow been magically gifted with the right to control and command other human beings. The belief in authority is the basis for the belief in the moral legitimacy of all forms of government. Every form of government, it's based in collectivism and authoritarianism. You can't have government without the belief in authority. If there's no authority, there's no government. Okay, this is a hallmark religious belief of everybody who believes in government and politics. Those who believe in human authority operate under a religiously induced delusion. Now, let me be very, very emphatic about that. Anybody who believes that human authority is true and is somehow morally legitimate and should continue to be conducted is delusional. They're mentally ill and they're operating under religious indoctrination and inculcation. This is a religion. Authoritarianism is a religion. Okay? The belief in authority is an illusion which can only exist within a human psyche that has become diseased. Again, it's a mental illness through indoctrination and mind control. Authority is, and always has been, based entirely in violence. Direct initiation of harm upon others if they don't comply in some form or fashion, and built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief that some people are masters who have the, quote, moral right to issue commands to other people, while others are their slaves who have the, quote, moral obligation to obey the laws set down by the masters. That's all religion, that's all authority ever has been, is now, and ever will be. That's all forms of government ever have been, are now, and ever will be. And you can call it whatever term you want to call it, but I call it what it really is: slavery. That's all it is. It's never been anything else. And to condone these beliefs is to condone slavery. The belief in the moral legitimacy of authority is the belief in the moral legitimacy of human slavery. Get as offended about the statement as you want, it's still true. I need you to find the difference between these photos, because there isn't one. They're all order followers. They're all believers in collectivism. They're all believers in authority and government. It doesn't matter what military it is. That could be the military of any nation on earth, and they could all get equally offended by the statement. It's still true. They're cut from the same cloth, whether they believe it or not, because ultimately they're willing to follow the orders of a leader. I don't care whether you're in the military, you're in the police, you're in the government, doesn't make a difference. Or even people, order followers in other institutions like education and medicine, etc. Order following is the problem, and the belief in authority and taking your place in the authoritarian structure is the moral problem. And that's what needs to go away if we're going to move forward as a species and truly evolve. The next cult mentality that foments cults, that makes them actually have their power, is materialism, or secularism, as it has been also called, with a worldview driven heavily by the theories of Darwinism, which obviously promulgates materialism, and extruding Darwinism into the human social domain as social Darwinism. Both Nazism and communism completely embrace secularism and materialism, placing significant de-emphasis on philosophy and spirituality, and placing a very strong emphasis on secular institutions and material needs only. They're not worried about people's spirituality or morality or the understanding of the difference between right and wrong. They're only worried about physical worldly power and gathering whatever needs they feel that they want to meet physically. That's all it is. It's all materialism. Okay? As an overarching aspect of their secular worldview, adherents of both Nazism and communism erroneously believe that political and or economic, quote, solutions to human problems even exist, and that such policies that they envision as solutions should be implemented by coercion and violence if they think that's necessary. Both of these cult ideologies have continuously failed to recognize and acknowledge that the only true solutions to human problems stem from an accurate and balanced spiritual worldview, one which encourages human beings to live in harmony with objective morality and natural law. That is the only way that we can solve problems. We have to align our behavior to the objective standards of morality that exist in the universe and are set down by creation's laws itself. Okay? Another ideology that underlies cults, especially in the modern day, is called postmodernism. Postmodernism is generally defined by an attitude of skepticism and rejection of ideas associated with modernism, often criticizing Enlightenment rationality and focusing on the role of ideology in maintaining political or economic power. Again, it's the de-emphasis on philosophy and spirituality, and it's just telling people, formulate an ideology and stick with it, whether it's right, wrong, moral, immoral, it doesn't matter. You have to just be a believer, right? And you just believe those things because there really is no such thing as truth. You have to just pursue what you perceive as truth, okay? Which, as we'll talk about briefly here, is solipsism and moral relativism, all right? So, postmodern thinkers frequently describe that knowledge and values, knowledge itself and values themselves, are contingent, or they are socially conditioned factors, framing them as products of political, historical, or cultural power hierarchies. Postmodernists go so far as to say the idea that knowledge even exists is a product of capitalism. I've literally heard them say this. Truth does not exist. That's a product of a capitalist worldview, or that's a product of the dominant, the male dominator hierarchy's worldview. That I've literally heard them say that. Common targets of postmodern criticism include, but are not limited to, objective reality. And there's no objective reality. We can just make up whatever we want as being real. We see this all the time in postmodern thought. Objective morality. Again, they're moral relativists. A big hallmark of satanic thought. Truth. There's no such thing as truth. It's whatever we make it up to be. Even reason. There's no way of actually arriving at truth. That's epistemology. As we'll see, that's also relative to the postmodernist. Science. They don't even believe there's any objective method of scientific inquiry. And there is. Language, even they see that as a socially engineered construct, and social progress. Accordingly, postmodern thought is broadly categorized by tendencies toward pluralism, that things could be two contradictory things simultaneously, irreverence, meaning that there's nothing that is sacred or holy or of value that even transcends the human being, solipsism, the idea that there's no objective truth or objective reality. Epistemological relativism, that means there's no known way of developing a methodology to understand what is true and real. That's the investigation of reality as epistemology. And of course, moral relativism, the idea that there's no such thing as objective right or wrong. This is a mental illness and a cult belief system. And it's rife throughout, especially communism, but was probably also very present in Nazi society. And then finally, the last ideology that constitutes cult belief is millenarianism. Not a commonly known term, but this is the belief by a religious, social, or political group or movement in a coming fundamental transformation of society, after which all things will be changed. Millennialism exists in various cultures and religions worldwide with various interpretations of what actually constitutes a so-called societal transformation. Many of the occultists and occult organizations that we'll be talking about distinctly held a millenarianist worldview. And we'll talk about that later.